Hello everyone, this is Dominic Olivo again with another one of your video vlogs, and this is probably going to be one of the longest videos that I've made on YouTube. It's been a long time coming, and I've actually waited a very long time to actually share this information. This is very true and dear to my heart, and this definitely does hit home for me. I'm going to ask my YouTube viewers here to please bear with me throughout the duration of this video, because there is some important information that I want to share with you guys, and like I said, this does hit home for me. Some of you guys may be able to identify with it, so here goes. But before we get into that though, you're probably wondering, what is all of this stuff on my face, right? So being that it is the new year, we're now fastly approaching the new year, I decided to give a new look. So you're seeing all of this right here. This is my beard. I decided to try it out, and I actually like it. I've had it for over a year now, on several months now, and I think I can adjust to it a little bit now. It's part of my manhood. It makes me feel more mature. It makes me feel more like my age. So I just wanted to share that brief information there. So again, I am very nervous to make this video and to share this information, because as articulate as I consider myself, or that I am, I'm able to articulate myself and express myself very well. At least I've noticed that throughout the past couple of weeks, throughout the past few years. I've been able to very well articulate myself, and to be able to make these kind of videos and to be able to post what I do. Like I said, this weighs very heavily in my heart. So again, I ask that you will bear with me. Like I said, I'm very nervous because I don't know how folks will be able to handle this kind of information. It's part of the reasons why I kind of prohibit myself from doing these kind of videos, because this information tends to be very strong. It's a very touchy subject for most people that do struggle with this. So again, I want to see if some of you guys, or some of you YouTube viewers, I know there's not a whole lot of you, there's probably very few viewers on here, but I wanted to see if some of you, or most of you, can relate to this information that I'm going to be sharing here. And so here goes. Some of you guys may be aware that there are people in society, or there are people in the world much like myself, that do have difficulties, that do struggle with challenges, and I'm going to share one of this. Some of you may know or be aware of people that have autism or Aspergers, and I'm just going to read you a definition of what that typically means, Asperger's, what that is. Basically, Asperger's, or like a form of autism, it's a developmental disorder that is characterized by certain difficulties in social interactions, aspects in socializing, and nonverbal communication, along with restricted and repetitive patterns of behavior and interests. Some of the key functions or challenges that it does involve with Asperger's, this typically does involve difficulty with social interactions, restricted interests, desire for sameness, distinctive strengths. It can also include remarkable focus and persistence, aptitude for recognizing patterns. Challenges can also include hypersensitivity to light, sounds, tastes, etc., difficulty with the give and take of conversation, difficulty with nonverbal communication, conversation skills, distance, loudness, tones, etc., uncoordinated movements or clumsiness, anxiety and or depression. These tendencies and all this information that I do share here, as I mentioned, I got this off the internet, so I'm kind of referencing from the internet, but this is something that's been weighing heavily, like I said, on me before, and I will share you this background. So some of you are wondering, what does this information have to do with me specifically? And I am going to share with you this background information. I'm going to give you my personal story. Again, I'm going to ask that you bear with me. Like I said, I'm very nervous. So the story begins one fall evening in 1989. This was a Halloween night, by the way. I was given birth with my twin brother at the Metropolitan Hospital in New York City. My birthplace was originated from the Bronx, so I did live in the South Bronx. And living in that particular area, you can imagine the kind of lifestyle that I lived in. It was not a very good lifestyle. It was not a really good place to live. Very hostile environment, I will say. So, as it was told to me from a very young age, I was diagnosed early at 3.5 years old. And some of the things that I did mention on here, I did reference from an article. And as you hear me talking, you may notice the difficulty in speech patterns. Some of the tendencies that I do have, I always used to have a tendency to stutter. I do have some forms of anxiety. There are things that I do struggle with. One of those things being my speech patterns, being able to keep up, and the way that I sound too, the way that I give out. These are all these lists of challenges that I'm giving up here. It's not all in detail, but these are just some of the things that I deal with. So the majority of the 90s was spent living with my brother and my sister, who just came into the picture. But the following year, my mother passed away. So we had a difficult transition getting through these next couple of years. I live with my father, and we spent living with him for the next couple of years. And it wasn't up until I was 13 years old, and my father got sick. I'm not going to get too in-depth into it, but basically, in short, drugs and mental health issues were getting into the family. It was pretty rough. My big sister, she came into the picture, and to this very day, I treat her like my mother. She took us into the custody because there were issues regarding my dad. He was very sick. He was dealing with challenges. Life got the better of him, and it was just a really hard transition. We basically lost a lot of people on our dad's side of the family. My grandmother lost her life. It was a difficult transition getting through these past couple of years. And it wasn't where I went to school. I'm going to ask that you bear with me here. My speech pattern, I'm trying to configure this. I'm trying to figure out the best way to express myself, because as I'm talking to you guys on the camera, my nerves are kind of getting to me because, like I said, this is very heavy information, and some of you may or may not be able to identify with this. But going back to what I said, where I went to school, there was basically no grade system. So it started out in the 6th grade. So I went to school up at this place in Co-op City. It's in the Baychester. It was in the upper section of the Bronx. All the stores and attractions were up there. I went to middle school up in that area for about a year or two. And like I said, there was really not a grade system. And then back in 2003, early 2003, my sister, myself, and my twin brother, we moved in with my big sister. So she was raising us 3 brothers and sisters, and she had kids of her own. I went to school. When I started in middle school, like I said, I was in the 7th grade. They had to do an evaluation because of my speech patterns. I had a hard time keeping up. I wasn't in regular classes. I was in the school that I went to previously before I moved up to Kingston, where I currently reside right now. I live in Kingston, but before living in Kingston, like I said, where I went to school, there was no grade system. I was literally placed in special ed, or not even special ed, but basically people that weren't able to talk. People that had trouble communicating, people that just couldn't get themselves together. Like literally, I was in a room full of children that pretty much couldn't talk or couldn't articulate, couldn't function through the day-to-day activities. They just couldn't do any of these things. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how am I going to be able to get through this transition? Because mind you, I was a teenager at that time. So getting through that phase, and then even moving up to upstate New York in Kingston from the big city, it was even a tougher transition because, like I said, when I did start out, I was in the 7th grade with my twin brother, and I basically went to a regular middle school. And there were people, there were kids that were around my age group. They were talking regularly. They were normal functioning children. It was a rough transition. My first year going into middle school, I didn't really get along with a lot of people. It was a tough time learning how to make friends, and I was obsessed with what happened when my dad got sick and I moved. I was pretty much obsessed with getting through that phase of moving. I didn't know how I felt about moving. I missed the big city. I missed all the things that were down there. It was a rough time. As I mentioned before, a person that deals with that kind of stuff deals with difficulties and change. Whether it's in friendships, whether it's in people, whether it's in the change of environment. So getting through that first year in 2003, like I said, I went to middle school, and they had me evaluated for like testing accommodations because I couldn't really talk or read. Not that I could read, but to be able to function like normal kids. It was one of those challenges. It became a back-to-back thing. I went to speech therapists. I've seen therapists. Again, I was just this shy, scrawny little kid that didn't really know how to function well with other children. So they basically had me placed in 12-on-1 classes. And yes, I was in special ed. I was still in special ed during that time. And during the 12-on-1 classes, they put me in a trailer. I was taking all the classes in that particular area. It was basically like 12 students and like 2 teachers. That's not, most schools don't really function like that, but that particular field in that area was specifically designed for people like myself, people that deal with social challenges, repetitive challenges, people that have Aspergers and couldn't really function well with other kids. It was pretty rough, but then things started to progress over time. The teachers that, when I started in 7th grade, they were very sweet teachers. They saw my ability to be able to function. I'm a big numbers person, so I like math. I've excelled in easy subjects like math and English and all these other different subjects in middle school, social studies, gym class. I've excelled my first year, so I went on to 8th grade and I started to see a progression. I started to notice change. I started to adapt pretty well to the environment. I was actually involved. I didn't volunteer at one point. I was going to the Boys and Girls Club, and even during that first year, it was kind of rough getting along with all the other kids because they would literally be running around and making fun of each other. I was made fun of during my first year. I was called all sorts of names. I was called Four Eyes. I was told by certain folks that I wouldn't be able to function or to be able to regress, but nonetheless, again, things started to progress during 8th grade, and I passed 8th grade. I went on to high school, and during that phase, between 7th grade and 11th grade, I was still in special ed. So I was taking classes, but getting through that particular phase during teenhood or adolescence, I was surrounded by a bunch of kids that, you know, they're very silly and they like to poke fun. They like to play games because, you know, what do children do? They like to play games. It's that period of time where they're not in adulthood, so they don't understand things like responsibility. They don't understand like things like morals. They don't understand these things. I mean, these kids are like 14 or 15 years old. Let's be honest. They're not adults. So, of course, they're going to act silly and do all kinds of things. Some kids are going to skip classes. They're going to do things that get them in trouble. Thankfully, I wasn't one of those people. Thank goodness for that. Because I was raised from a family that, regardless of where we came from and the struggles that we had to endure during our time in the city, I was raised with respect, morals, how to be polite to other people, so I didn't skip classes and get in trouble. I was pretty much a bright young man. Passed my classes, always attended classes on time. I was very active. I participated even though kids were making fun of me because, again, children are not at that stage where they're ready to mature, so of course they're not going to pay attention to the faculty and the staff that were teaching at that period of time between 7th and 11th grade, or getting out of high school and then getting out of middle school and then going into high school. During that transition, there was a lot of kids in that high school, and you know, there's all these things. You know, they say sometimes that, you know, different kids come in different backgrounds. You have your nerds and you have your shy people. Then you have your famous people, people that are active in sports. I was not one of those people. I was not. I really. How do I say this? There really wasn't a category to really put me in. I was definitely not one of those famous kids. I was very shy. Not that I was shy, but I was somewhat introverted. That I didn't really get it. I didn't talk, so I didn't really make a whole lot of friends. I was just pretty much to myself most of the time, and I would sit around kids, but I would pretty much be around the older kids, people that were like juniors and seniors. I was a freshman, mind you, and I was sitting with the older kids because people around my age group just, they didn't really know how to act during that time. I felt compelled to sit with the older kids because seemingly they seemed very mature for their age, and the high school kids during back in my time, they looked so mature for their age, like you couldn't even tell that they were in their teenhood. Some of these people, they looked very old for their age. They were like in their early 20s going into their mid 20s. And so I felt comfortable around these people. I mean, yeah, granted, they were kind of silly, but they seemed very cooperative. They were very respectful to the faculty, including the principal. So I would always sit with them around lunchtime because, again, I didn't really know how to get along with people around my age group or my classmen. I was a freshman, like I said. I did this throughout my freshman and sophomore year. One of those things that sparked my interest was sitting around the older high school kids with that they were normal functioning people. And I felt compelled to be around these people because I felt like I had that security blanket of some sort. You know, that safety bubble, that, you know, the feeling that I can go to these people because, again, they're a couple of years older than I am, and they're just getting out of high school. So they knew respect at that time. I mean, they were silly, but at the same time, they didn't poke fun. They didn't poke jokes at me. I mean, they wanted me to, you know, be relaxed and get comfortable and things of that nature. I mean, they did little things like that, but it wasn't to the extent of bullying. Bullying did not go over during my time. It wasn't, during that time, I was not really bullied. I didn't get into any fights and things like that. So, again, with these upperclassmen, I saw potential in friendship. Like I said, I felt compelled to be around these people because, again, I saw full potential. I saw some things that really sparked my interest, and a part of me wanted to be like them because I didn't know where I was. I was classified, like I said, I was called names. I was poked fun at by other kids around my age, or younger kids. You know, they would make fun of me. They would call me things like, you know, being a retard, being dumb or stupid. Anytime I would participate in one of my classes just to answer questions and discussions, every time I raised my hand, and it was like, anytime I got the wrong answer, it was always like, oh, he's so dumb. He just can't function. And that's part of why I didn't feel comfortable being around people around my age group or my classmen, being that I was a freshman and a sophomore at that time. With the older upperclassmen, like I said, there were some things, there were some characteristics, there were some traits that they had. Some of these people were famous. They were athletes. They were people that were being recognized throughout their community. They were written in newspapers. And so I felt compelled to be like these people. It was one of those periods where I didn't really know how to be myself. And I don't know, it was just those challenges. So moving along, I got through the first 2 years of high school, and during that time, I was still going to the Boys and Girls Club. I was actually attending my church, and during that phase, I was attending choir rehearsals because I'm a young man that likes to sing. I like to be around music, and people that were inspired by music. I was with these young guys, and we got together to form an ensemble. And so we would go to church service every Sunday mornings, and we would sing in front of the congregation. Not only that, but we would go over through parts of the Kingston community, and as well as we traveled through all the different churches and community events. So long story short, I was active throughout my community for a while. I was actually volunteering at this place, the community center with all the young kids, you know, little children. So I did things of that nature. But going back to the subject, during that time, like I said, it was during my freshman and sophomore year. And once I got to my junior year, this is where things really kick in, because it was that pivotal point throughout my adolescence that I'm getting ready to transition out of high school and into adulthood. So it was during that period that I started to take regular classes. I passed all my classes in my freshman and sophomore years, all these different subjects in math, history, gym class. There were a wide variety of different classes that I had to take, like general educational classes that I had to take. And by the way, during that period also I was going to my speech therapist. I was going through my IEP meetings. I was sitting down with my big sister, and we were going over the testing accommodations and what my plans are for the next school year. So I got through that phase. Then progressed through my junior year, then went on to my senior year. Now this is where things get very real, because now this marks the final year of high school, and my nerves were shaken because what am I going to be after high school? Where am I going to be? Where am I going to transition? This was the most important part of my life. Getting through the biggest challenge was getting through my final year of high school. Where was I going to attend college? Where was I going to be after after I get out of high school? Where was I going to be? Where was I going to stay? So before my senior year, I was at my college club through my school, my church. They hosted their college club. I was also involved in this program called the Liberty Partnership Program, which is a program for high school students through all of the Hudson Valley in preparation to get ready for college and adulthood and being able to manage. And so I was involved in these particular programs. In this college club, they had us take the SATs, because during that time we're getting ready to go to college, right? So we're required by state law to take SATs, and there are all these different subjects. These SATs were in preparation for us to transition from high school and into college. These tests were taken in early February of 2007. So I took another test later that year, around the fall time during my senior year, and my scores were substantial. I barely passed, and they were substantial enough to get me into the four-year school. I went to New Paltz. I was admitted under the Educational Opportunity Program as soon as I got out of college, as soon as I got out of high school. But going back to what I said before, high school is a difficult transition for me, especially during my final year of high school, because I've attended meetings, I went to workshops, I went to all these different colleges, got to see what the college lifestyle was like, and it was told to me that as soon as I got out of high school and went into college, there was no special ed. There were not any of these programs. I'm pretty much on my own. So that really got to me, because I didn't know exactly how I was going to be able to function. I had doubts. I didn't know if I was going to be able to function with all the other college students. I didn't think that I would make it through my first year, because college is a very tough institution, especially because you're required to do homework, you're required to go to class, they make you to do papers, but it's a higher institution of learning. You basically have to pay for these. It's not like high school when you attend 5 days a week, where it's covered. When you're on your own, when you get into adulthood, you're paying for this. You have to apply for financial aid. You have all these extra responsibilities. I'm gonna put it to you like this. When you get out of high school, you're pretty much on your own. You have a car, you got all these things, you have an idea of what you would like to pursue. So pretty much an adult. It's now the real world. You're either going into school or working the regular job. You're pretty much independent. You pretty much have to pay for your own stuff. Life out of high school is completely different. You live on your own. You pay your own bills. You pay for your tuition. You pay for food. All these different things that I'm mentioning right here. And no, it sounds very overwhelming, right? But these are the kind of things that I had to do. These are the kind of lifestyles or life challenges that I had to deal with getting out of high school. So nonetheless, I did progress moving forward. I went over and I got through my senior year, and came graduation day. Long story short, I'm able to graduate high school, and to be honest, that was like my biggest accomplishment. For me to get out of that, all 4 years of high school, along with my twin brother, And then me and my twin brother would then proceed to go on to college to pursue our undergrad studies. But during that time, I was undecided, so I didn't really know what subjects that I wanted to do. And then I got involved into the media, like I was volunteering for a while, I sang in church, I went to the Boys and Girls Club, all these things that I'm mentioning here, I volunteered. It was centered around media because, I would volunteer to record videos, I would get behind a camcorder, but not only that, I'm also involved with music. I don't play instruments. At one point I did play an instrument, but I always believed in using my voice because my voice is my main instrument. So I did all those things. And despite all those things that were said to me from a very young age by other peers or by very few adults, those adults that I went to school when I went to the city that told me that I would never be anybody special or that I would ever get this far in my life, here it is, a couple of years later after high school, and long story short, I graduated college, and to be honest, getting through that 4 years of hard work doing papers, that in itself was a challenge. I say all of this because even though I didn't land my niche, getting through that in itself to me was a big accomplishment. Getting through 4 years of college. Now that I gave you viewers pretty much a background of who I am as a person, this is where things are going to get very real because I'm pretty much going to just put it out there and give you guys an insight and pretty much how I pretty much got into video vlogging and why I made these videos to even begin with. So going back to what I said, I am a young person with a disability that has a desire to inspire people that pretty much live with the same condition as I do. Part of the reasons why I made these videos and why you see me doing all these extra things is because I like to put myself out there. I like to share my talents. I like to sing, I like to do video vlogs, I got a little hands-on with editing. I've been around music, like I said, I've been around with my brothers. At one point in my life, I was into percussions. I did play drums. I did play the keyboard at one point, but then I got more into singing, and I do have relative pitch. So those are the things that I'm currently working on right now, but just having the drive to actually do these things and to keep doing it because I know these things are not done overnight. These things take a lot of hard work and a lot of progression, and you really have to sit down and you have to do your research in order to get these things done. Part of what got me into YouTube videos and how I started video vlogging and why I created this page in 2008 stemmed from personal things that I had to deal with. I was made fun of. I was pretty much underrated. Like, I was told things that really got to me personally, and I'm going to be honest and just put this out there. Part of this did stem from wanting attention or wanting to be validated. That's another one of those key factors that I forgot to mention. With some people or children with disabilities or that have Aspergers, one of those key characteristics is also validation. They need to be validated by other people or by other individuals, like your peers or your family members or even your friends. Like, that's one of the things that got to me for a very long while, is the constant need for validation, to put myself out there, to make myself known to the world that I am somebody special, that I'm not all these things that people have said about me, people calling me dumb or that I wouldn't amount to anything, that I wouldn't amount to all these normal functioning people, these children or adults. So again, part of the reasons what stemmed from me doing these YouTube videos and why I created the account stemmed from the need to be validated, but as I got older, I got a little bit more mature, and I became a little bit more understanding over time that these are not the reasons to actually put oneself out there. You want to put yourself out there for you. I say that because there came a time in my life that, to this very day actually, that I have a hard time being myself. It's hard to be myself because of all these things that were done to me. So what's happened in the past is I pretty much put on this persona that I wanted to be somebody that I wasn't, and I've done that for a while, and then like I said, over time I realized I was going through it the wrong way. I was making YouTube videos, I sang, I did all these different things. I posted all these videos, not just solely for validation, but I wanted to make myself known to the world. I wanted to promote myself. I wanted to inspire some people, but I didn't really have a target audience. I didn't know. At the time I was young, I was just in college. I was in my early 20s. So I kept at it for a while, but even still not reaching my target audience. And it would have me wondering, well, why weren't people watching my videos? Or why wasn't I getting the acknowledgement? Things of that nature. I'm a very young dude, I was putting myself out there, and I thought that people would be inspired, to look at my videos and to see the talent that I have, to be able to sing and to overcome obstacles. I had obstacles throughout my lifetime, especially getting through my childhood, getting through that phase. It's one of those things that I neglect to mention on here because, again, this is very heavy information, and I know some of you, it's hard for some people like that to be able to handle things, and I'm telling them. So in creating a YouTube channel, it's actually 2 of them now, and a Facebook page and now an Instagram page, I have to now rethink my approach. I have to think about what the target audience is. Who am I trying to reach specifically? Am I trying to reach people that are like-minded just like me? Or am I all over the place just to try to fit into other people and other groups, just to make myself known to the world for the wrong reasons? These are the kind of things that I have to think about whenever I do things like this. And I was having a conversation with a family member the other day, and I had to really rethink things. When it comes to doing things like this, I understand the precautions when making YouTube videos and putting yourself out there for the whole entire world to see. It's hard, 1, and 2, when you put stuff on the internet, it kind of lives forever. So we have to be wary on what we put on social media or on other social networking platforms, as well as places like YouTube or Google, and being mindful of what content that we post, how to appeal to our target audience. That's one of the issues that I've struggled for a long time. And like I said before, I didn't know how to really be myself. Now I'm coming on here and doing this video confession to letting you know who I truly am as a person. So now, whenever I do go out and I do volunteer and I go to this event and I do sign up to go sing and do cover songs and do all these fun, fantastic things, and I share them on the internet, I now have a new approach. I thought about it, and now I've considered who my target audience is. Pretty much being around people that are like-minded like myself. I'm doing this video to make people aware of my situation and some of the things that I have, as well as other things that people do struggle with, but to also inspire people that have the same issues like I had. Another key component that I forgot to mention, as I mentioned earlier in the video, is one of the traits that people have with Aspergers is issues dealing with depression and anxiety. I will share this. There are things that seemingly not many people are aware of that I do struggle with, and part of what got me doing videos and what I said on here is dealing with issues of depression and or anxiety. I'm a person that tends to be very tense. I do get very anxious when I'm around people. I've now come to the point of realization in my lifetime where I'm kind of assessing the situation around me and assessing the people that I surround myself with. And you may recall a video vlog that I recently made talking about these kind of things and living in isolation and assessing the kind of person that I am. I made a video recently about a year ago talking about the kinds of things that people are, and to resuscitate and to sit down and reevaluate themselves and kind of to get to know themselves. So again, in my adulthood, there are things that I still struggle with to this very day. Like I said, this is a long life-lasting condition, and it's incurable. but these are the kind of things that I have, people like myself have to adapt to. Feelings of dealing with anxiety and feelings of, like I said, having Aspergers, and one of the key components of that is I tend to feel anxious around larger crowds of people. I tend to have a hard time keeping up socially, like holding a conversation. Sometimes my attention span tends to be very short, so it's harder for me to keep up with what people are trying to say, keeping up with current events, or when it comes to reading books, my attention span is very short, so it's hard to sit in one place. I constantly have to get up and move around. I can't be stagnant. I have to be doing other things. These are some of the key components again that I have when dealing with Aspergers. Another thing that I have too is that I do have a tendency to be focused on at least one or two subjects of interest, and it's a repetitive cycle. I tend to be more focused on, or as some people would refer to it as, a single track mind. I tend to be focused on one particular subject, if not two, and it's repetitive. So long story short, let's say for instance, I have a subject of interest and I like numbers, so I'm good at basic math. I tend to talk a lot about numbers or even things of my interest, like traveling, hanging around friends, or like, let's say I'm in a social gathering, right? Let's say I go to a bar and you hear people, men and women, have a conversation about relationships. I can't really relate to that. Like, that's not really my cup of tea. The things that they talk about are not really the things that I'm into. I'm into the things that I'm into, if that makes sense. So despite the select list of challenges on here and the disadvantages that I mentioned on here, the disadvantages could also be advantages. While I may not relate to every single person on this earth, there are people in this world that actually do have the same things that I do have. It's just a matter of getting to know one another and then sharing all these aspects and these traits. And they say, people with Aspergers too, they're very smart individuals. They're able to articulate over time. You hear all these famous celebrities. Look at Dan Aykroyd, for instance. He was the actor who featured in the 1984 movie of Ghostbusters. He has Aspergers, and look where he is today. He's out there making money, and he's out living a life to fulfill himself. So there are advantages in this world. For instance, being able to get up in the morning, put on your clothes, brew a cup of coffee, make breakfast, get dressed, leave out of the house, go to work, go to meetings, things of that nature. Basically what I'm saying is, people with Asperger, some people do have the ability to live independently, and these are people with high-functioning Aspergers. I forgot to make that key point. I am a person that does have high-functioning Aspergers. With people like that, they're able to demonstrate responsibility. They're able to demonstrate that they can communicate, that they can hold a social gathering when they do go out to the public. They're able to hold some form of conversation. They can talk, they can articulate themselves very well. Some people also know how to seek help when they do need help. They do know how to reach out. There are plenty of people in this world with different abilities, talents, and skills, and not many people are fortunate to be in the position where I am. And I'm going to be honest and transparent to say that, sure, I may not be where I am right now, but I'm thankful that I'm not where I used to be, considering how I was brought up in my life and all these different lists of challenges. There were a select list of challenges that I did bring up on here, but just to share with you guys that there are some positive aspects with living with Asperger's. If you put your heart and mind into doing something, some things can and will get accomplished over time, but it does take a lot of confidence, and it does take getting to know yourself. You have to be real with yourself. I've actually come to that point in my 30 years of life. I've come to the realization now where you have to be real with yourself. You have to be honest. You have to learn how to be open about these things. Don't keep these things secretive. These are the kind of things that some folks need to know, because there's people out in the world that do struggle with these kind of conditions to be able to function in their everyday life. not being able to adapt to changes that are going on. There's all these constant changes, worldly changes, and now when you see in the news and all these things that are going on in the world, all this corruption in politics, and these things really hit hard. You know, as time goes on, things become more difficult and difficult as we get older. But over time, if we persevere, we can, over time, get through all of this. So again, here I stand before you 30 years later to come clean about this kind of stuff, and I am successful in what I do currently. I do work a regular job, and I'm able to maintain my basic responsibilities. I'm able to come and go as I please. I'm able to live independently, be able to budget effectively and to save my money in order to do trips and all these fun things, and to make video vlogs just like this one that I'm doing right now. And with these videos, I'm also going to share on my other YouTube vlog. I have another one, which is a travel vlog. I'm going to be sharing this on here too. So I just wanted to inspire someone again in what I made this video. And I really hope that this message that I put out there reaches somebody's heart. And if it doesn't get everybody, I've said this before, basically, if I touch one person and that inspires somebody, I pretty much did my job. So I know this was a very long video, and I thank you guys again for bearing with me as I did this video throughout this duration of the video. I pretty much covered topics that were vital to my everyday life, and that I hope this video reaches out to people. And as you can see, I do have a cough drop in my mouth because it is that time of year, it is the winter time. And all this talking that I've done on here made my voice wear out, so I'm kind of using it as like my voice reliever. So again, I hope you guys enjoy this video, and this will not be the last type of videos, this will not be the last kind of videos that I make. Be on the lookout for more videos like this to be able to inspire my viewers, the very few viewers, and now knowing who my target audience is and who I'm going to be reaching out to. Pretty much people that struggle with the same things that I do struggle with, but also to anybody really. Doesn't matter of all religious, age, whatever skin color, doesn't matter. Whoever watches this video and makes the time, I hope this inspires you too.